items that are identified that are best risk management practices. These are compliance with state law. These are things that we have identified as things the city should work on. That might be establishing a policy for tree trimming or inspection or sidewalk maintenance or conducting prevention of harassment training, etc. We identified 32 action items. Our risk manager on our staff will work with your staff to address those items. That's what they're there for, working hand in hand with you to identify and address those items. So as a result of that initial risk management evaluation, we had the opportunity to discuss with our underwriting committee just this morning the application that the city has made for membership consideration. This is a step along the way for you to know that we're serious and us to know that you're serious. We've gone to this next step. Our underwriting committee did ask a number of somewhat pointed questions about the city's operations and ultimately agreed with staff's favorable recommendation to move forward. The underwriting committee's recommendation goes to our executive committee, which will be meeting next Wednesday evening. In the meantime, the application and the initial risk management evaluation is distributed to all of our 116 member agencies. And that is for comment. So if you want to reach out to your friends over in Lake Elsinore, that would be good. They're probably your closest neighbor, and we've got some over in the Coachella Valley that are close to you, and then we go to Loma Linda and Grand Terrace and those guys. But their input is helpful to our executive committee in determining whether it is a good member to join the pool. The most important thing that we are doing at this point in time is protecting our existing members because they want to bring in a good risk, and that's what we as staff and as the underwriting committee recommend, that you are a good risk and you'd be good in our program. It was unanimously approved, forwarded to our executive committee. It'll be on their agenda next week. The only other item I wanted to address was, well, two items. One was within our program, and this is a little bit of a clarification of what was said by both Rick and Gordon. Within our program, when we developed our excess liability program, and that's just for Gordon's understanding, we do have the excess program and the primary program. In our excess program, we developed it a few years ago with the purpose of providing the level of support that most members need in managing their claims. All claims are reported to us when they happen. All claims are managed by the third-party administrator. Across the board, all of our members have the same third-party administrator. So there's an inability to, if you will, mess up a claim and then drop it on the pool. We're aware of it from the beginning. The second part is when a claim becomes litigated, it is a requirement that you select an attorney from our approved panel. Now, we have a very broad panel, and we add to our panel from time to time at the request of members. But we have litigation guidelines, litigation management guidelines, budgeting requirements for our attorneys so that there is no unexpected overrun of expenses that I know have from time to time caused some heartburn. So you have to use our pre-approved attorneys. The cost for those attorneys is just like an EIA. It exhausts the retention just as it does there. So up to your $250,000, those legal fees will exhaust that retention, and then about $250,000 it goes to the pool. Different in the way EIA operates and the way California JPA operates, the financing of the claims is done from your initial contribution and by setting up a trust fund that you are required to maintain at an appropriate level. So rather than every month coming back and having to pay for claims and then getting a reimbursement sometime later, we are paying, as soon as it gets to our level, we pay beginning at $250,000. Until it gets there, the funds are being paid from an account that you have pre-funded to ensure that the money is there, because we're on the hook with this for this claim with you. We want to ensure that the money is there to be paid and that the attorneys are getting paid in a timely manner. So that's the way we set it up, somewhat different, but there is no, reimbursement for large legal claims after legal bills after the claim is resolved months later. So I think the long and the short of it is we are smaller. We are just cities. We provide, let me say that slightly differently. We are just municipal exposures. We do have some JPAs and some special districts that are formed by our member cities for things like animal control or local planning agencies and councils of government. But it's just municipal exposures. We don't have any schools. We don't have any counties. We were formed by cities for cities. And so we really understand what you do. Most of our staff has actually worked for cities, including myself. So we understand what you do, and we really think we're the best solution for you.
So the next slide talks about everything that the previous speakers have already discussed, and it discusses how claims are managed between each of the agencies. So with CSAC, across the board, you're going to see a more hands-off approach, and with the JPIA, you're going to see a more hands-on approach. So with the EIA, and I've used this exact slide in the last council meeting, but for attorneys, EIA, you choose your attorneys. With JPIA, they have, like John just said, they have a panel of attorneys. The 20 attorneys, John, I think that's what you guys have, that you can choose from.
About 20 to 25 firms.
Great. And if we wanted to stick with our city attorney, they are on that panel. And you can choose from any of those attorneys. And for authority intervention, the EIA doesn't intervene unless there are competence issues or there's some sort of issue that they have to intervene in. And the JPIA, they're all hands-on. And then, of course, as you know, our current service, we get reimbursed. So everything comes out of our pocket, and then we have to file for reimbursements. Now, the EIA has offered, if we are having issues with the timeliness of payments, they are willing to come to the table and discuss that issue. Otherwise, if we want to do the JPIA, it's a trust account. They average out our losses, and they say this is the amount that we will want you to put into the trust account, and then they will take care of all of our claims. So, again, we're walking hand in hand with those processes with the JPIA. So for legal defense, everyone knows that we had a heavy year this year, and this conversation came up to see if we could mitigate some of the costing for our lawsuit, and we looked at primary programs for liability, and that would be where we just pay a premium, an annual cost, and then it's an all-inclusive coverage for our liability claims. There's no deductible, no SIR, so it's not you have to pay $250 and then they'll cover it. It's everything's covered, and then the authority, both EIA and JPIA, would handle the claims. So by advisement from both of the agencies, we excluded this option because of the cost. So they say cities of this size don't need to do that unless we're planning on experiencing heavy litigation loads every single year. Otherwise, if we're only experiencing $200,000, $300,000 worth of losses, we don't need to do that. So that's not in your staff reports. Does anyone on the phone have any comments on this slide?
No.
These are really high-level benefits. Like I said in the beginning of this presentation, you're going to get very similar things in both of the programs. But with EIA, a lot of their stuff is online. They're not exactly proactive in coming and saying, hey, it's time for training, hey, we need to do this. But it's all available to us if we wanted to take advantage of those things. They have an online library. And instead of having a risk manager, which we would get for JPIA, who goes through our policies and our agreements and stuff like that, we have a broker, which is Renetta, who's been incredibly helpful during this process. And the broker comes out, they come out periodically during the year, and they say, hey, what do you need? But it's just not as in-depth as what we would get with the JPIA. Renetta, did you say you wanted to comment on this slide?
This is Erica. This is Rick, and I'm going to comment on this if I could, please. I am in charge of member services for the EIA, and it's truly something that we take great pride in. As you mentioned, Erica, it is a different philosophy. It certainly is. We aren't set up to be boots on the ground for our folks. We don't have a risk manager that comes to you. But what we do have is we have a staff of 85 people, truly with incredible expertise, and they are always available to you to help you with whatever risk management issue it is that comes up. We still believe that in-person training is fantastic, and that's the best form of communicating. It was recognized by Post this last year, who actually accredited us, so that we've been doing regional training programs through Post. So things such as de-escalation training. We have relationships where we've been going through regional trainings and conducted workplace violence and all sorts of things like that. But one of the things, going back to John's comments, and I very much respect John, I think that, as we talked about in the past, within the industry, we just have a different mousetrap, and we happen to think ours is better, and he thinks his is better, and both of those are great. But some of the things that we're able to bring to the table because of our scale are so many free services. Things such as Target Solutions, which is an online learning management system with hundreds of web-based videos and trainings out there. Everything that's focused specifically for law enforcement, to ergonomic risk, to dangerous road conditions, to driver's training. We have our own web portal, which we call EIA TV. We do about 80 webinars a year. And the nice thing about that is, in person is great, but a lot of the time it's tough to get staff to be able to have the ability to look at those things. So these are all available 24/7 on our portal to be able to have that. The other thing with our economies of scale is we have free legal advice services. We also have free labor law EPL legal services. Those attorneys are all on retainer for our members. We have free contract review services. We have a risk assessment tool. As you guys just experienced, the access for crisis incident management services. We do claims audits and claims index reporting and employer pull notices. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I think one of the other philosophical differences is that we don't mandate these things. We don't say if you don't do X, there's going to be repercussions type of a thing. We are there to sit by your side to help you manage the risk, and we have a tremendous amount of expertise that's available for you. All in all, we have 45 different best-in-class service providers that we partner with, so that if you need assistance in any of these other ways, everything from background checks to cybersecurity to workforce management software, we negotiate on your behalf and typically get 25 to 30% off of these service providers' typical rates on behalf of all of our members. So this is all available for you. So I just want to make sure that all of those points are heard as well, because just all of these different types of things need to be considered in your discussions.
Thank you, Rick.
You're welcome.
This is Renetta. Good evening, everyone. In addition to that, through our broker partnership, we do offer on-site training on various topics, insurance requirements and contracts. We have also offered to review all of the city's contracts and make recommendations for changes. And we just had a meeting, between maybe February to discuss it all again. In early March, we talked again and followed up. But there's various things that are available. And again, we do a lot of that training in your office. You just need to invite your people. It's just getting the organization itself to come up with a list with us of what it is you need.
Thank you, Renetta. So you guys have this.
Erica, can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Thank you. And Rick and Renata, thank you for identifying a number of things that are actually very similar about us. We have 28 full-time staff members, which I think proportionally means we have more staff per capita than you do. We have free training, we have on-site training, we have web-based training. Last year we had over 45,000 training contacts. About 20,000 of those were web-based training. We have a risk management educational forum annually. We're at our cost, no direct cost to the member agency. You can come for a full gamut of training. Council members, staff members, planning commissioners, whomever you'd like to send at our cost. The web-based training is free and it's available 24 hours a day. It's available remotely, just as EIA says. We also have self-produced content as well. We have safety shorts that are prepared for particularly public works and tailgate meetings and things like that. Similarly, we have free legal services, employment intervention hotline that we always want you to call before you take an employment action to get advice before you do that. Our risk managers are there with contract review, questions about any project or program you're about to start. We'd love to get involved and help you design it to ensure that we're not there to say no. We're there to say, how can we do this in the best way to serve the member, to serve the city and the residents, and protect them from harm. We also have a crisis management communication provider at no cost to you. None of these things are mandated. We don't require you to do it. We find that most of the members take advantage of them because their rates are reflective of their experience. And failure to do some of these things will lead to higher rates, higher experience, and that will lead ultimately to higher rates. We are, like Rick said, we all respect one another in this industry. We do things differently, and we think our mousetrap's better than theirs.
Yeah. So as indicated in this chart here, you have very parallel programs. We're going to get very similar things in both of them. So I'm not saying either one is better than the other. You're going to get very parallel things. It really comes down to the philosophy and then the cost. So that's where the cost is. And if you look at the right-hand column where the premium difference is, that's really where I focus my attention on. For excess liability, our cost for JPIA would be more, but then it balances out at the bottom. So JPIA is up $286, and then they are lower in the primary workers' comp, $323,000, and property, again, that's not included until next year. And then cyber is included, and then the crime premium is a little more. So that total isn't $100,000, it's $33,000. So we would have a cost savings about $33,000 if we moved over to JPIA for this year. EIA's current indication looks like it is an increase from our last year's budget, but that's to be expected. And the JPIA would be a little lower. And that doesn't include the Lexapol cost, so that's another like $20,000. So we would see a $51,000 savings if we moved this year to the JPIA. So I wanted to talk about the timeline that's in your report and what I spoke with the EIA staff about, because we are trying to get this in a succinct timeline because they're going to executive committee on the 22nd. So they're going to evaluate our materials, they're going to evaluate the risk analysis, they're going to evaluate our budget and our staff and all of those things, and they will determine if we would be a good fit. We did get an indication from the underwriting committee this morning that they would like to accept us. So that would be their final decision. And then we would like to come back on the 28th to you so you can decide, yes, pursue this, send final notice, send provisional notice to the EIA. So if we're going to pursue other membership on another authority, we have to provide provisional cancellation to the EIA by May 1st. And then final notice would have to be by July 1st. So because we don't have the EIA's final numbers, we can extend that out another week if we want to come back that first week of May. But what I would like to get a consensus on tonight is whether you would like to send provisional, if you want to move forward and ratify our application with the JPIA and move forward in getting a formal proposal. And what we would do, if you do decide to move forward in that, is we'll come back to you on either the 28th or the first meeting in May, and we will lay out their entire formal proposal. This is what it is. These are all of the benefits that we'll get, and then we can move forward in that process. Questions from the council?
All right, I'll go first. Can you go back to the chart? And I know that this is probably not...
The one with numbers?
Yeah, the one with
Yeah.
this one. If we are getting an estimate from the EIA and the JPIA, wouldn't we give them both the same payroll numbers to give because it's all based on percentage?
Correct.
So they're not the same.
On the top, this,
Like JPIA's, they've got the 27,719 on both. So theirs in my head is like, okay, that is correct, but they should be giving us an estimate with the same payroll numbers.
correct. Renetta, can you comment on that?
A hard time hearing the question, I'm sorry.
The variance in the payroll numbers in the first chart on excess liability payroll.
Wasn't that
These
from
were the
your prior? Sorry, Renata.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay.
The
You're
first
correct. And those numbers were provided by the city. Yeah.
2021 columns need to be the same.
Yeah, I
The far
agree.
left-hand column are
I agree.
for last year.
This
The
is
two middle
probably,
columns are for comparison for the coming year. Is that where the confusion is?
so typically what our staff does, our finance staff will give an estimate for CSAC, and then during different times we'll have different estimates. So I imagine because we did the JPIA more recently, that variance happened there. But we can make sure that that's the
But I
same.
mean, for us to decide, it needs to be equal.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In future, when Erica mentioned the subsequent meetings that we review, we would obviously button that up. We are in the middle of budget right now, so that would be buttoned up, obviously.
And then that indication will be the same. Yeah, I got you. Any other questions? Yes.
A couple. So basically, anything dealing with the JPIA hinges on the fact of whether or not they will accept us into their group.
Correct.
Or not. So
Correct.
they're the deciding factor in the short term.
Yes. Now, we've been told that the executive committee follows what the underwriting committee's recommendation is, and the underwriting committee's recommendation was for acceptance.
Okay. Now, the other, and I think this was in one of the last presentations that we had received, was that there was some type of limitation that if we went with the JPIA, there was X number of years that we had to stay with them before, if we chose to go back to the other one.
Yes.
CSAC.
So JPIA, you will be required to stay in their programs for 3 years.
Okay.
If you leave the EIA, you can't go back. Correct me if I'm wrong, Renetta, for 3 years.
Yeah. That's correct.
Yeah.
If you leave a program,
Yeah.
then you can't come
Yeah.
back.
Well, I mean, they're not going to dump you.
Yeah.
They're not going to cancel before you could go back to somebody else.
Correct. And what I would like to add on to that, thank you for bringing that up, is during the first presentation that we made, I was concerned about subsidy funds that we hold with the EIA.
Right.
So every year of our membership, we get an additional money so we can do trainings and we can do risk management kind of things. We haven't used those funds. So I was concerned that we were going to lose $45,000. But because we just renewed our property program, we will be able to use those funds in the next year do trainings, risk management kinds of things. If we were to move to JPIA, we would still be able to keep those funds.
Okay, I'm good.
Bonnie?
Well, it's been enlightening. I like the idea of a hands-on approach a lot. That is especially important to me, especially since, as indicated, there's 32 areas that we need to look at that nobody else bothered to tell us. So I appreciate that approach myself.
Okay.
Same with me. I think risk management has been an issue with the city of Emmett for a very long time, and it's costs the taxpayers of the city because of that. I think the city right now needs a hands-on risk management approach to be able to kind of get things smoothed out, get our people trained better, so that we're looking at managing some risks and making better decisions.
Yeah, and I'd have to agree with both of you on that point. I think it's vitally important these days to be proactive, and I think we also need to recognize that a lot of our legal fees are attributable to perhaps things that could have been preventable through a proactive approach, because a lot of our legal fees are born out of litigation expenses. And so being proactive, at least the theory is, if you're proactive and you're training your staff on how to avoid situations that could perhaps lead to litigation, you don't ever experience them, so you don't have the litigation expenses. So I'm a strong advocate for the benefit of proactive approach and the hands-on, and the fact that they've already identified a number of areas where we need oversight. And since we don't have anybody full-time assigned as a risk manager, that to me is a real plus in the service delivery. I understand the similarities in both. I understand the difference in size, but to me the most important thing is the proactive element.
So if it's your will, we will ratify the application and obtain a membership proposal. So we would go ahead and send that provisional notice to the EIA and go to the executive committee.
Is that? I'm seeing head nods.
We need an official vote on that one.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Do we need a motion on that, or you just want staff direction?
We prefer that.
I'll make a motion that we move forward with this and send it on. This is with the JPIA. Send it on to the committee.
So as provided in the staff report, as well as the provisional notice.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Meyer and a second by Councilmember Percival that we go forward with the recommended action of number 2 in the staff recommendation. Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Percival?
Yes.
Councilmember Wright? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes. And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you for a very thorough job, staff report. Thank you, Rick and John.
Yes, thank you.
Really appreciate all of your participation in this, and also acknowledge the great services that you both provide.
Thank you very much. We look forward to
Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
I would also like to add to, I think this is the perfect example of council providing direction, which was a few months ago, and seeing a process through, and then ultimately coming up with the staff recommendation, the analysis, and then obviously the council taking action on that. So I want to convey my appreciation of the council for committing, providing that direction, and then moving forward on items that are new, that haven't been explored by the council in a number of years. So thank you.
All right. Now we're moving on to item 9F, Public Safety Department microwave radio purchase. And we have our Police Chief, Eddie Poost, is going to give us a staff report.
I think both chiefs can provide some information, but I think Chief Poost is going to provide the overview and then answer any additional questions that the council may have. So, good to see you, Chief.
Good to see you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Really challenging times, isn't it? It's been a busy day. You know, sun came out and interesting things happened in the city. So, or in the valley, I should say.
Yeah. A lot of sirens today.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So I'm here before you to give you a brief a timeline and the history. This has been a long process, which is very important. We have one shot at it, so we want to make sure that we do it right. As you know, in 2018, we contracted out with Pegasus Radio Consultant for options to come up with a new radio system. Our radio system is it's over 20 years old. It's a failing system. It's end of life. As you know, at one point we did, over the years, we've kept putting Band-Aids on this system over and over, and it's at that time where now the system does not integrate with new technology. We are unable to get any parts for the system, so that's where we're at right now. Our consultant group, they did a fabulous job. They came out to see what is going to best fit the city of Hemet, our public safety, as well as other areas. And they came up with a two-phase option, which was the microwave system, which we're bringing forward today, and also our radio system. So the best choice was to separate the two systems. And the benefit of that is the large companies will come in and bid for the whole project, and you'll get a high cost because you get these large companies. And radio companies build radios, microwave system companies build microwaves. So it's interchangeable with the new technology. As we get the microwaves, we'll be able to move forward with the phase two, which is the radio project. In 2019, we appropriated the Measure U funding for this project for both phases. And in April of 2019, Pegasus assisted in drafting an RFP. We put a work group together, which consisted of PD, Fire, IT, Finance, Public Works, and the consultant group. I think I covered all those. I think those were all the people involved. It was a successful RFP, and I want to tell you that because during the initial proposal, we had 11 vendors that showed up. And according to the other vendors, usually you don't see that many at any of these proposals. So out of the 11, we received a total, we did site walks, we reviewed RFPs, but out of the 11, we had 7 proposals from 5 different vendors. With the 5 different vendors, we did interviews in person with 4 vendors, the 4 top vendors, and I'm going to give you a list of the vendors that we interviewed. The lowest bid was just below $500,000, and the highest bid was just below $1.2 million. The 4 vendors with Microwave Networks, they're based out of Texas, and they bid at $495,175. Petroleum Telecom, they're out of Oxnard, California, and their bid was $626,767. Day Wireless out of Oregon bid $879,992. And Aviat from Milpitas, California, bid $1.126,576. Now, this work group we put together, as I said, it was very beneficial to us. They covered everything. The proposals are extremely large binders, so they went through everything, and we went with the best value bidder. And the reason we went with, this was the second highest bidder, is just the first bidder was based out of Texas, and they were going to contract the work to a vendor that we did not choose. And then all the maintenance and everything would be contracted out as well. So the second highest bidder, which was Petroleum Telecom, is the best value bidder, and that's where we ended up here today. So they're a local vendor. They're out of Oxnard. The service and the staff report is included, which is a 7-year service agreement. And what this is going to do is this is going to improve our current radio system, better frequency. We'll be able to, it's considered a ring topology, which there shouldn't be any interference or interruptions if one of the sites go down, and it allows that to continually work. It's a 99.99% to continue the work process and being able to do our job over the radio. So that's where we're at right now with the staff report, and the staff report is going to request the following: to designate Petroleum Telecom as the best value bidder, to direct city manager to negotiate and the city attorney to prepare the contract not to exceed the amount of $626,767.16. And this is going to authorize the city manager to execute the contract once completed and issue purchase orders for that amount. And this also authorizes the city manager to extend the consulting contract with Pegasus for the phase 2 of the contract, which is the radio. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have regarding the staff report.
Well, thank you, Chief Foose. And just for the record, I want to mention again that the opportunity for public comment on this item was provided during item 5, communications from the public, earlier this evening. Staff have any questions, or council have any questions of staff? I don't really have any specific questions. I would like to compliment the whole team. Having had an opportunity to do work like this in my previous life, I know how rigorous it is and how complex it is, and I think the team approach that you took to get the consultant, because you do need a professional communications consultant on these kinds of things, and looking at the various components was a very intense undertaking, and the team approach that you took to looking at all the different facets, I think, is critical to coming up with identifying the need and then finding the best solution to it. So compliments to all the staff involved in doing this research and getting us to this point. I also know too that the technology is ever evolving, and the fact that they would be offering a 7-year maintenance is huge in my mind, because who knows what the technology is going to be in 7 years. So having that built-in maintenance will keep it up and running through all that time period, and who knows where we might be from there, but having that long-term maintenance is very important. So those are just the comments that I have about the project at this stage.
My command staff, Glenn Brock, who worked on this, and Dale Batista, who worked on this project from the inception, as well as finance, public works, fire, IT, of course. Scott, if you're out there, IT.
Yeah, he's there.
So if Scott wants to add anything too, regarding the technology, aspect of this, by all means, Scott.
You have any comments, Scott?
No, it was a really good process. The vendor that we chose really impressed us. They didn't kind of hem and haw about options. They're very forward and upfront with what they felt we needed, and that's one of the reasons why we did select them. And of course, this will stop the bleeding, of course, with what we have, and allow us to continue on with adding new. So that's the biggest thing right now, because the frequencies, the systems that we have right now are still necessary for us to communicate with other fire agencies. So keeping that up and then also moving on to something new at the same time is going to be a good thing.
Thank you, Scott. Well, if there are no more...
questions.
Okay.
Let's see here. I'm very thankful that you added all those bids in your summary there, because, I was going to have a heart attack about not having any bids posted. Is there any way, and maybe Chris could answer this, but is there any way for him to just have a summary page added to our official packet? Because we've kind of promised people that we would have bids just for transparency. You don't necessarily need to see the bids, but if you have the amounts and the names.
Yeah, we can do that moving forward.
I just think it would be, we've kind of said it moving backwards, so maybe we could just insert that into the PDF.
We can make sure it's included.
Okay, I think that's important for everybody to see that we got bids. Your process that you've explained is impressive, and so I'm glad to see that we can do that. Another question I have is with Pegasus, we're going to extend their contract for $56,000 to do an RFP for radios.
That's for the radio upgrade, which is the phase 2 of the whole project.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they're going to decide what radio will best fit us.
Do we have to pay $56,000 to know that? Doesn't somebody already know?
No, that's the consultant part, make that separation. The savings with Pegasus, and Scott could attest to this, is at one point our system failed and we could not find parts. Pegasus actually reached out to another company up north and was able to find the parts necessary, which we were just dead in the water. And we got these parts at a reasonable price and we're able to move forward. And this is over a 20-year-old system, so we're fortunate on that aspect to be able to stretch it out this far before we move forward.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, I was going to ask you, warranty and contract and stuff, like the contract's not in here, but we have like the RFP request is in here.
Yeah, the contracts, there are so large, binders are like 2 binders tall, so that's another reason why we didn't add all these other bids. And what the cost is, I would have to bring a box in here with all these binders. It's pretty large. In fact, I think we had to have Clay look at it on the iDrive to be able to review it.
Nice. And so as far as warranty, like, I don't think this is like cynical, but the problem, like if you Google Petroleum Telecom, you can't find them. They don't have a website. So for an electronic place, it's a red flag for me. I'm just being honest. And so then that made me question like warranty, and do we have all that?
Yes, that's included. It's a 7-year maintenance agreement.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 24-hour response time. But the new system, which is a ring topology, I know there was a question asked about if something occurred and the microwave was off tilt, our system would still work. But what is monitored is they will know that it's off tilt and be able to, because they're hard mounted, and would be able to respond and fix that. You have to do it physically.
Okay.
So it's a great contract included, 7 years. I think our IT specialist, Underwood, would attest to that as well. I mean, for a 7-year contract on this radio system, this could be beneficial.
All right, if you're confident, then I'm confident. Thanks.
Okay. No more questions, comments? Then I'll entertain a motion on item 9F.
I will make a motion that we approve item 9F, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Krupa and a second by Councilmember Percival to approve the staff recommendation. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Percival,
Yes.
Councilmember Wright,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes. That motion passes unanimously.
Mayor, if I may, be remiss if I didn't do this. This is a perfect example of multiple departments coming together and providing this solution to council. And so I really want to thank our chiefs, IT, finance, public works, everybody that was involved with this, because I know just a few years ago, it was probably in, I'd say 2016, I believe, that this was identified as a need to be replaced. And in the last year or so, there was some significant issues with the system that necessitated this solution to move forward. And it was the team that we have now that's moving on these projects. And someone made a comment to me earlier this week and said that the amount of movement on projects has been pretty remarkable. So I want to thank the team, because it's all of them that are making this happen. And I can't thank them enough and show my appreciation enough of them being the ones that are taking care of business. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And that brings us to item 9G. But before you start, Chris, it's just about 9:45. Do we anticipate going past 10 o'clock? And if so?
He talks fast. You gonna talk fast?
I will talk fast.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody good? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a heavy agenda tonight, so I'll try and make this as brief as possible. As you know, March 16th, the council declared a local emergency in the city of Hemet as it relates to COVID-19. Since then, or at that same meeting, the council directed us to include an update in subsequent council meetings. So this is here as informational, for informational purposes. On March 16th, the council did adopt the emergency declaration. Thereafter, we've had a number of actions that we've taken. On March 20th, on March 19th, the governor issued a stay-at-home order, and in response to that, we provided a video update to the community. The video received pretty significant and overwhelming response from our community. We've been working on providing additional updates by way of the mayor on social media. On March 21st, we shared infographic guides, information related to essential, non-essential businesses by way of the governor's office and the county. Those guides, again, received some pretty overwhelming responses. It was shared 151 times, over 22,000 insights on the metrics that we track on social media. On March 23rd, we updated our website and included information from SoCalGas. That was shared 120 times, over 15,000 insights as well. On March 24th, we had our first council meeting with the new methods and the new techniques that we've employed. Most of the staff that is off-site is here via Skype. We've continued to utilize teleconference lines for the meetings that are still being held citywide, utilizing teleconference lines, Skype Business, those methods to prevent face-to-face interaction with our staff. In that time, too, we developed telecommute options, which we've rolled out. I believe the last count that I had earlier this week is we have over 40 employees that are using this option and are working off-site, and we provided a number of laptops as well as cell phones so that they could stay connected to the city during this time. On March 26th, we asked that the public refrain from using the equipment at facilities at Hemet Parks and Facilities. We locked the bathrooms at each of the parks. On March 27th, we had our first confirmed case in the city of Hemet. And we also reaffirmed our actions that we were taking to limit the spread of COVID-19. We developed, in partnership with IT and public safety, a See Something, Say Something reporting mechanism where individuals that saw actions that were unsafe for the greater community, to report that to the city, and that information is relayed to our public safety team, and they take action if needed to look at what those issues are, and we have a documentation, a track record of those items that come in through our system. We did that in response to a lot of individuals that were using 911 and emergency dispatch, and we wanted to alleviate those systems and really make those systems only for the emergency system or the emergencies that individuals might have. On March 31st, Riverside County issued a recommendation: stay in place, maintain your space, cover your face. We've also shared this with the community. Also, too, Hemet Valley Hospital, Hemet-Gobel, began drive-through test screening here in Hemet in our community, which has been very positive and very productive for our community. That stay in place, maintain your space, cover your face order obviously is why we have these masks. I did make that a requirement for all city employees to make sure that they were taking these precautions seriously as well. On April 1st, I'd like to thank the staff. They're the ones that provided pictures of their loved ones, of their families, obviously the ones that we're staying safe for, to make sure that although we may not be potentially high risk, we do have loved ones that may be at high risk. Me in particular, I've got my mother that's got thyroid issues, sister that has lupus, and my father is over the age of 70. So for me personally, it's a big deal because I don't want anything to happen to them, and that's how we were able to make it human for the executive team. On April 3rd, I did a field trip and I drove around the city to look at our parks, and I saw many instances of individuals that were not complying with the closure of playground equipment. We're still utilizing it, and a number of people that were playing basketball with significant lack of distance between one another. So we made sure that we took down the equipment where needed so that wouldn't, we would prevent individuals from utilizing our facilities and not abiding by social distancing that had been set forward. On April 6th, Riverside County Public Health updated the mandate requiring all people to cover their faces, and we relayed that to staff as well. That same message was relayed to the community as well on April 7th. On April 7th, we began working with Mayor Brown to provide an update and some encouragement with the community in terms of what we expected for the community, and just really emphasis on maintaining the challenge, or maintaining the social distancing and other requirements, directives that were put forward in the light of the challenges that we have. With that being said, we've continued to offer service to the public, albeit a little bit differently. We've continued development activities, residential, commercial as well. We've employed creative ways to provide that contact with the public. In the staff report, it says 35 employees are telecommuting. That's an old number. It's upwards of 40 now. Plan submittals are being accepted electronically for engineering and community development. And during business hours, members of the public can drop off paper plans into the drop box outside. We do quarantine those plans to ensure that nothing on those plans is being transmitted to our team members. City inspectors are doing windshield surveys, including code enforcement, and we've directed them to not have direct contact with members of the public. Building and safety is doing inspections. Again, they're doing them through FaceTime and other methods of communication to make those happen. All material that's coming into the library is quarantined for 72 hours to make sure that, again, our staff isn't exposed to anything that they shouldn't be. I should also note that we are employing a number of different practices at our public safety facilities. Obviously, the health and the safety of our public safety employees is of critical importance, particularly during emergencies such as this one. So as anybody that's here at the council chambers saw, we did have police officers here that did scan everyone, have their temperature scanned to make sure that nobody was running a fever. We've heard of numerous instances where neighboring partners have employed this practiced and actually identified individuals that had fevers, and the individuals just didn't know it. So this is out of an abundance of caution. Again, the safety of our public safety professionals is critically important. I would also say, too, to our dispatchers and the other support personnel here at Public Safety, critically important. We may not be too far off from doing that to the rest of our facilities, including city facilities as well that aren't public safety. So, again, out of an abundance of caution to protect our employees and make sure that they stay safe. We have had to do a number of difficult items to help deal with our budget reality. And so part of that includes a budget freeze. Non-critical purchases will not be going forward. And so we are clearly looking at all the purchases to ensure that if it can be deferred, if it doesn't need to happen right now, that we aren't doing it. We've had to do a hiring freeze in multiple departments across the board because of the issues with respect to a lack of sales tax. And so this is, I've provided a number of communication to the council in terms of what this means for our budget. This is significant. And just for the sake of conversation, I wanted to provide some information. We're moving through our budget process. A significant amount of our revenues is from sales tax. And so this year, when the council adopted the budget for this fiscal year, we anticipated approximately 12.1 in sales tax revenues. When you add TOT, which is the hotel tax, it's an additional $1 million. And so on average, that works out to approximately $33,000 each day that is remitted at some point to the city in terms of sales tax. So every day that we aren't having businesses open, every day that our car dealerships can't sell cars, every day that we're not open as we ordinarily would be is a significant impact to our budget. So we have run some preliminary numbers, and we anticipate that in the time that everything has been shut down to the end of this fiscal year, which is only a few months, we anticipate at minimum at least a $1 million decrease in sales tax to our city. And that also includes significant reductions in TOT. The reason I bring that up is because that's why we've had to implement a number of these practices. It's not because we feel that we don't want to bring on more staff, or that we don't want to do this, or we don't want to do that. It's based purely in our fiscal reality. And so the longer that this carries on, the longer that continues to hit our budget. Just earlier today, I read of a neighboring agency that was expecting a $5 million hit to their budget. That is significant, and it's going to be significant for us. As you know, our car dealerships are the most, they're in the top sales tax producers of our community, and if they're not able to open up shop ordinarily, you know that that's going to have an impact on our budget, and you know that's going to have an impact on our operations. This year, we're doing our budget a little bit differently. Each department has been given a target budget to reach. Now that we're expecting a lower amount of revenues for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as what we have now, we are having to deal with the reality that our budget is no longer going to be what we anticipated it to be. That's why it's critically important that the city and the executive team take action to help minimize our expenditures and really reduce those expenditures where we can, because we know that that reality is going to be far different than what it's going to be moving forward. That's what we've prepared. We will also be working on buttoning down future revenues for the upcoming fiscal year. I can say that we've started to develop 3 scenarios. Those 3 scenarios are a best case scenario, which would be a closure of what we experience right now with a potential reopening and growth in the economy starting the new fiscal year. And we anticipate that that's going to those impacts are going to be in the millions of dollars, even in the best case scenario. In the worst case scenario, we anticipate some significant reductions in revenues, upwards of over, and this is preliminary numbers, upwards of over $4 million impact to sales tax, TOT, and different revenue streams. So what does that mean? Well, that sales tax is used to fund our operations. That's how we fund our firefighters. That's how we fund our police officers. That's how we fund engineering. And so we're revising those numbers, and we expect to refine them a little bit more. We have a meeting with HDL next week to go through that and refine those numbers